Thank you once again for joining me in Doodling with Purpose, the internet's only free week-to-week lessons in ancient Egyptian hieroglyphs. My name is Scott Knightlick, aka Scott Toy Guru Knightlick, though we're not talking about toys, we're talking about hieroglyphics, and we're talking about the tenses of hieroglyphics, because all languages have tenses. And lately we have been looking at the different tenses that ancient Egyptian has that English doesn't quite have. And that is the relative form, the participle, the past participle, and the future tense. So, what are these? These are tenses that turn the verb into either a noun or an adverb. So, what I mean, if we're looking at the past participle, the verb to see in the participle form becomes one who sees. So this is obviously a little different from English. In English, we actually have words for these things, like a listener, a lover, a lookout, a giver. But instead, in ancient Egyptian, it's one who listens, one who loves, one who sees, or one who gives. That's how that's handled. All right, so we are going to look at the very bottom one on this list. We'll come back to the future tense last. We're going to look at the relative form, verb as adverb. So what do we mean by this? Well, it no longer means to hear, to see, to love, or to give, as far as our four verb types. We are now dealing with what a noun hears, what a noun sees, what a noun loves, and what a noun gives. Again, something we don't have in English. So let's look at the four different forms. The strong verbs first. So we've been using to hear, sijim, which is the ear plus the owl, sijim, to hear. In the relative form, to turn the regular verb into that, we're going to add a T. You're used to doing that with the infinitive. And then a noun or pronoun. In this case, we're using he. I could use she, I could use they, I could use we, I could use the king, the man, Bob, Sally, anything. We're just using he for sake of simplicity here. So we add a T and we add a pronoun. Boom, now the relative form. This is now, instead of to hear, it's become what he hears. So that is your basic relative form clue. Let's look at the other three forms to see how this form works for them. For doubling verbs, ma'a, to see. So once again, we're also going to add a T, and we're going to add a pronoun or noun. And again, I'm just going to keep using the pronoun for he, the horned viper, but you could be using anything. Bolt of cloth for she, the proper name, the king, the vizier, the snake handler. All right, weak verbs. Weak verbs, so here we have the word to love, mer. In this case, we're going to add that T and our pronoun, but we're also going to double the last consonant. Usually the only verbs that double are doubling verbs. But in this case, in the relative form, one of our clues is that weak verbs also double. So we've got our T, the loaf, our pronoun, horned viper for he, and a double of the final consonant, mer. So another R there. Extra weak verbs. Well, it's not going to be too much of a guessing game here. Same kind of premise. We're going to add the T. We are going to add our pronoun. We are going to double the consonant, but we're also going to remove that R. You know how in some forms, in extra weak, we lose an R if it's at the beginning? This is one of those. So we've lost the R, we've doubled the final consonant, so now it's just sort of DD, but you don't actually pronounce that. The extra consonant is there for form, not pronunciation. Then we'll add the T, which is kind of the equivalent of adding a what, similar to how you have the infinitive form. And then our pronoun, which again, I'm keeping with the horned viper for simplicity. So the only difference with extra weak is noting that the R gets eliminated in that extra weak. So that's how it should actually look there, since I wrote all over it. I wrote it there in red at the bottom. What he gives, from the verb radi, to give. So now we've converted it into the relative form. So the overall clue that you are in the relative form, going from to hear to what a noun or pronoun hears, is we're going to add a T to every single form, strong, doubling, weak, and extra weak. We are going to add a pronoun to all of the forms, strong, doubling, weak, and extra weak. And then for weak and extra weak, we are going to double that final consonant. And as for extra weak, we're also going to remove any beginning R. It's just one of those other extra hieroglyphic things that shows up in quite a few different verb classes. So if you were going to come up with an overall statement, you would say that everything doubles in the relative form except strong verbs, and you add a T and a pronoun. And of course, that whole R thing with the extra week. But for the most part, doubling, T, and pronoun, except for strong verbs, is how you know you're in the relative form. So that is our clue. Your homework this week is both to copy down the relative form clue sort of, I guess, catch-all to help you understand what to look for. But also, here's a sentence using the relative form. So it's got vocabulary words servant and the verb do and the verb praise and favor. So see if you can work that out, knowing that's the vocabulary. All right, we'll take a look at it next week and how the relative form worked in that sentence, as well as look at the past relative form. Not that different from relative, but it is a form to look at. So that's where we'll be, continuing as we doodle, not with dignity, well, with dignity, but also with purpose. All right, thanks for watching. I'll see you guys next week.